Hey everyone, welcome to the 32nd episode of the LIBERcast, and I'm so glad to have all these people with a lot of wisdom and these great workers around to have a discussion about something. I think um, it has to be talked about. We need to bring up these things, and then the LIBERcast is about healing and the consequence of mind control and things like that. And I think having solutions is the best way to help people, even ourselves as great workers, as shadow workers. You know, we did this. These are names for things that we do, but we're not really that. We're students of the occult. So I before we're getting into, I just want to bring something. Here we go. I'm gonna do a little acknowledgement. So I want to bring that the shadow work community, that it's on LIBERcast on the Facebook. Sorry about that. And this is the page there. And Karen Riley.
Yeah, she's awesome.
About the shadow work. Her work is incredible, and she's brilliant. And I want to talk about a little bit of her new course that you can take if you want to, for the beginners or the initiates or the people who already are deep into it. There's a lot of good advices and wisdom there. So if you want to encourage Caroline Riley, this is where you're going if you want to have like good insights about shadow work. She's very knowledgeable. So thank you, Caroline, for your work. So thank you. Just we're beginning, and I want you to talk about who you are and what your work, where your work can be found. It's not where there's some people who are gonna stumble upon this conversation and they don't know who you are. So if you can have a brief introduction and your work. So Chris.
All right, thanks, Fred. My name is Chris Jansen. You can find my work at inevil.life. And recently I just was part of a conference. It was called Freedom Under Natural Law. You can check out freedomundernaturalllaw.com. And you can also see more of my work at onegreatworknetwork.com. And I'm mostly like to base my work on the work of Mark Passio, has been inspiration to me, and then also The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. Mm-hmm. Evil's the destruction of freedom. I'll pass it along.
Awesome. Rick?
Oh. Hi, Fred. Thanks for having me, and welcome everybody. And it's great to be on a panel with so many amazing people. I'm Crypt Rick. That's what I go by. So you can find my work right now I'm on YouTube and Rumble, and I'm adding to more platforms, and it's under Crypt Rick I've Been Thinking. And you can also find me on Revolution Radio twice a week, which is at freedomslips.com. And yeah, I'm along with Chris. Somebody that really helped me put the pieces together was definitely Mark Passio, and a lot of other incredible people I've met. So it's great to be here. Thank you.
My pleasure, man. Brendan.
It's a pleasure to be back on here with you, Fred. I'm sure your viewers are kind of familiar with me by this point, but you can find, for the new people, you can find my work at seedtruth.com. I am an occultist and anarchist that have been studying the ancient mystery traditions pretty much my entire life. I was raised as an anarchist. I have a background in the punk community, the freedom community, the metal community, the skateboard community. I have a background in a lot of different eclectic areas. And, I'm just really happy to be here with such great minds and to be putting out amazing work with you guys. So thank you.
Thank you, Brendan. Derek.
Bonjour tout le monde. Yeah, Mr. Wannabe French guy. Been there for a dozen years, and during that whole time, I had profound spiritual awakenings and kind of put a lot of my musical knowledge of a lot of underground and conscious music in the works of tapestries that kind of portray, all types of areas of awareness and all that good stuff, going into the occult and nothing taboo. And that's kind of what I've been doing for a long time, getting into a lot more stuff, and I'm aspiring to do all types of good things. And yeah. Activated individual, let's do this shit. Looking for solutions from the soul,
James.
James Quarterner, freeyourmindne.com.
So easy like that.
That was good.
So the subject tonight, I think we can start right there, because I think the hour is gonna go really fast, this hour and a half. So is there someone who want to start to talk about this important subject we have?
In regards to shadow work, or
yeah, what is the topic that we're talking about today?
Yeah, we're talking about bridging the gaps of all the discords within certain truth communities, and I put a video out, and so it has a lot of yang energy. It's titled "Where is the Unity in the Truth Community?" Because you cannot spell unity without community. And obviously, the photo is still showing the shadow work community, and I love all that type of work that people are doing. I have a really good friend out here, close by, local, that's written a book recently. He's doing on the ground work and all this beautiful things, and they're getting results, and people are transforming their lives. And I see that on the ground level. I see that with what a lot of you guys are doing, as far as bringing the knowledge forefront in so many different ways. And yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And I just see a lot of people, it's like fragments of consciousness floating around. We're clinging on to all these different psyops and all this stuff, and people are so cult-like in some of these, rabbit holes, if you will, that it's taking away from the priorities of where we're trying to get at with actual freedom, not freedom or the free dome or whatever that people want to fall into dialectics, right? It's like, what are the priorities, people? And I want to bring a lot of compassion to the table and understanding, and let everyone know that I'm sure everyone here on this panel has been through being duped and having to deprogram and re-educate oneself in so many ways and rectify all the manipulations that one has been subjected to, right? So we can show that towards other people, even if they're not really on that level. You can tell by the frequency of people's vocabulary and language that they use, even if, and we understand there's bots and all this stuff on, YouTube or the internet and Facebook and all this stuff. There's so many different ways that the systems of control are, pitting people against people, but also we have this, the AI invasion of all this other fuckery, right? So we're here today to try to, set down some more fertile soil to plant more seeds and bridge more gaps with the higher minds that actually know what the fuck is up to a good degree, but actually still aren't necessarily there. There's a lot of tourists in the truth movement, and people need to realize that it's a full-time job within oneself and understanding the external world around themselves. So I'll pass it on. Thank you.
So if I could pick it up from there, it's been on my mind a lot lately, this kind of topic about the overarching message within the truth community, right? And it seems that a big portion that's left out is like the end result of it all, like all the conspiracy cats out there that like to just point out how we're being lied to, but they never really focus on the big overarching problem of the who is doing all of the lying. I mean, there are people out there that do focus on that. I'm not trying to put everybody in the same box, but there's a lot of people out there that just like to think that like, oh, look at this, like they're lying to us. And it's like, okay, that's great. It happened in the past, they were talking about past events a lot, which is fine. It's great to like get people's attention. I've been harping on this a lot lately. So, excuse me for anyone that might have heard me say this other places, but it's almost as if people have set up this line of dominoes, and everyone thinks that theirs is the first one to get knocked over, and then if theirs gets knocked over, then the rest will fall now. And unfortunately, that's not really the case. What's really the first domino to get knocked over in order to like have everything else fall down is the teaching of like natural law and objective morality. Because if we can learn that, if we're focused on teaching that, then we prevent future instances where a government would be lying to us, because with these teachings actually implemented and people actually taking them and learning them and putting them into practice in their own lives, then we would effectively render any sort of government system obsolete, because they cannot exist in a world devoid of mass violence. And so anyways, to further my point, I think that what could really help our community and the movement that we hold so dear and care about would be to kind of encourage people to be doing what they're doing, but try to really focus in on the teachings of natural law being the answer to prevent future psyops from happening, future things that will happen that they all want to go, look, they're lying to us again. It's like, okay, well, you never really like that, I guess, is really my point. It's like the again in that sentence. Like, what are we doing to stop the again? And there's plenty of people, I think all of us here on this panel, that really take to heart about the teachings of natural law, objective morality, doing spiritual work on oneself, such as shadow work that you mentioned, Fred and Rick, your presentation last weekend. I think it's time that we kind of really start to encourage people to unify under one banner of truth, and having it be like, all right, about natural law and objective morality. Really, I think that it's lacking a lot. A lot of conspiracy guys out there, they just like to, I guess it almost feels like they're grifters, it almost feels like they're just like on the train that, because they like riding on the one car that they're in, but they don't want to go to the next car where there might be some solutions, because they like the fear porn, and they know that if it bleeds, it leads, that type of, these types of sayings that we can throw around, but like, it's a tale as old as time that people like pressing pause when, like Maynard from Tool. I love the lyric from Vicarious off of 10,000 Days, where we all feed on tragedy. It's like blood to a vampire. And it's like, all right, that's why every year when 9/11 comes around, they all go, never forget. It's like, well, okay, because why? We were all traumatized simultaneously. Like, you want that trauma to go on forever? Fuck you. I don't. I was a little kid when that happened, and it sucks. I don't want to see that. Who wants to see 3,000 people dying all at the same time, right? I mean, who knows? Like, you know what I mean? So I think that in order to heal, we have to look toward the future and what can happen, what we can prepare for ourselves for in the future to, like, first of all, not fall for these psyops, right? And I know I'm talking about 9/11 and everything, and I'm hogging the mic right now. I feel terrible about that, but I have a lot to say. But anyways, just, you know what? I'm just gonna pass it on. I'm just gonna pass it on now. Thank you for hearing me, guys.
Good, bro.
So I want to bring a something that this is more the material aspect. This is the outside, but I think there's something that we need to point out first. Is, did you start the inner work? Did you start it? Is it? It's not all about knowledge.
Right. All right. I think that there's a lot of people in our circles that, like, when we start looking at the tree, like, we start branching out, right? And you got a lot of people that are involved in trying to expose lies, right? That's like a lot of what we do is we know that we're all being lied to. We're truth seekers. We're truth speakers, right? To use those kinds of, like, terms. And we know that we're being lied to. And a big part of what we do is an attempt of exposing the lie so that other people can see it too. Unfortunately, where I think that a lot of people, none of whom are on this panel tonight, but unfortunately, I think, and this is my opinion, that a lot of people out there that are in our line of work, in quotes there, they don't see past the problem, and they don't seem to care about the healing part. They're just waiting to keep talking about the tragic side of things and the things that cause the pain. They want to expose the lie, and that's great, but the overarching message of natural law being the solution for the future is absent. And if we can really try to, like, help people, and I listen to certain podcasts about conspiracy theories, and the amount of times that they have the guests come on to talk about the conspiracy theory that they're interested in, they just want to talk about how much we're being lied to, and it's like, that's great, but you're not talking about any solutions. Then there's, like, half the time there's nothing we can even fucking do about the things that they're lying to us about. So it's like there's nothing we can do about chemtrails. There's nothing we can do about it other than stop flying on the planes. But then they're just going to go up there and do it anyways in their own planes. It doesn't matter what we do about certain things. They're going to keep doing it because they hate us. But there are things that we can really take into our hands. We can really, practice our power that we have that's never been taken. We've been fooled into thinking that it's been taken from us. We still have it. There's no taking that power back because we never really gave it away. That's a part of the trick. They trick us into thinking that we have no power. So we just realize that we still have it. We always have, and do things boots on the ground style of things that we can actually make change in. And if we can do that, then that carries over into bigger things eventually. But it's all about the end goal and being able to see the end goal, the light at the end of the tunnel. It's going to keep you going, So, I mean, I'm very long-winded when it comes to these things because I think about it all the time.
James, you were talking about there's the chemtrails, that's something that has really really got to me in my process of realization. I think I have a audio problem. Let's switch to someone else. I'm going to switch off for a second here.
Well, I can cut in. I'd like to say that, yes, we have a big community issue within the freedom movement, and we definitely are not unified in our task. I actually spoke about this at my presentation at Seed 4, and one of my final slides was being unified in our task, obviously, with spreading natural law. And it's just like what James and Derek were bringing to the table. We do have this conspiratorial mindset where people get locked into the notoriety of new information a lot, and they become addicted to just talking about the problems. And one reason I see that the root of this is that not only we are psychologically prone and conditioned to look at negativity a lot more than anything else, but another reason is because people at some level still believe two things. One is that they believe that government itself is still good at some level. And this is why you get terms like the deep state. So if you still need government, if you still need conspiracies to prove to yourself that government is inherently evil and it's slavery, then you still at some level believe that there's some part of it that's still good, and you're just going to flip. And I mean, think about the Donald Trump election and how many anarchists, that the so-called anarchists, just got wrapped back into that political agenda, that dialectical agenda, right? And the other thing is that people don't believe that they can make a change. People, even if they have the solution, like even if it's in their mind, they still don't believe that they can make a change because they believe these people are in absolute control over every aspect of their lives. And it's like what James was just talking about, and that's the illusion, the illusion that you have no power to create change in your world and or in yourself, right? So they indoctrinate people into thinking that they have absolute control, and that's not true. I'm not saying they don't have a lot of control, because they do, but it's a big illusion to think they have a totality of control over every little aspect of every little choice that you make. So I think that's really important to understand. And I think solutions, being unified in solutions, is one of the main things that we need to organize with in this community. And so I'm really happy that we're bringing this to the table, because it's been an issue that I've been seeing for, probably 7 years now, where we have infighting going on about all these different rabbit holes, right? Everybody's bickering about, let's say, the psyops of flat earth, or, all this other stuff that has no real relevance to whether we're bringing about freedom or not, And I used to be a big conspiracy theorist. That's what got me into a lot of this stuff. So I'm not saying that you shouldn't be into conspiracies, but I'm saying at some level, you got to get out of that and you got to move forward, You got to get out of the conspiratorial mindset and really get some scholarship in your mind. You got to advance yourself and raise your consciousness to really become strategic and tactful, because we don't have tactfulness or strategy when it comes to any of this, at least in the majority of the freedom community. So, that's a little bit of what I wanted to say. So I'll pass that on to whoever's next.
Right on, Brandon. I'll jump back in. Sorry about that. What I was going to say, I really appreciate what you're saying there, Brandon. That's right on. But what I was going to say about the chemtrails, what I was reacting to James, is I've had this imagination when I got really frustrated with that topic of, like, what would it look like if we actually decided as a people to stop the planes? Like, if there's plenty of people, if people all over went to every airport and just stopped planes, that would be the end of it. Okay, like if everyone knew we're being sprayed like rats, right? And it only takes a moment to have a realization. So in theory, everybody could have that realization in like a couple seconds. You know what I mean? If we had an effective way of spreading that information, that knowledge. And it would really only take a few moments with the amount of people in the world to flood every airport on every part of the planet. But we can't get there because we can't make that conversation happen. We can't bring that to the forefront in the first place. And that's because what Brandon talked about, people are living in the plane of effects. They're living in oh, here's a problem, there's the problem, there's the problem. But those are all effects of things that have already happened. And what the inner work is really about is realizing that this experience we're in this is a God experience. We're going through a spiritual realization, each of us. And when you're awakened to that, you can't see things happening in front of you, or you can't be part of doing things that hurt others, right? But so many people are living in the world of effects as if they have no choice. They're just like almost like believing in fate and not recognizing that this is a spiritual experience and that the things we do matter. If we could get people to come to that recognition or realization, everybody could realize in really quick. It'll only take a moment. But how do we make that effective communication to help people get people there to recognize that this is a spiritual thing? That's the difficult part. Well, we start with those of us that know that, and we show that in the way we do things, right? And in order for us to show that, that means we need to have effective conversations and debates. We need to be able to disagree with somebody in our own community and have an effective conversation where we don't necessarily agree at the end, but everybody leaves on good terms and we all learn something from everybody's point. And we're pretty far away from that right now. And I suggest one way is like this: roundtables of starting debates with simple rules where we all take turns talking and we respect one another's opinions or differences. And if we can show people how to do that and how we all learn from it, then we won't have to be like those other idiots on the TVs, with the dialectic left and right, red and blue, back and forth. So it's up to us to be a little more even-minded and rise to that next level and be able to have honest discussion and debates about things, and not ignore them and pretend like they're not important. If people are bringing things up, it's because they're interested and they're curious, So that's what I was thinking of saying.
So, what do you think, guys, is the worst problem? Is it communication? Is it the lack of understanding? Is it too much higher stakes? Are we going to are we like, our goal, is it too high, or we have to start from the bottom and then going up? What do you think?
It's a good question.
Yeah, that is a good question.
Yeah.
I think that we are traumatized. Like everybody has been traumatized by the way we've grown up. We've been indoctrinated, we've been chemtrailed, we've been poisoned through the water, fluoridated. And so people are traumatized and people are mentally screwed up from all the Hollywood and television. So, we're all coming from a place of being damaged, and we have to get past that obstacle. And so I think the number one problem is objective morality not being understood as a real thing. There's nothing else, that's to me the number one defining characteristic between someone I can have a conversation with that can keep going and someone that is going to get stuck. If they don't understand objective morality, they're not going to be able to have this conversation we're having, So that's the first thing we got to get past. That's number one from my point of view.
Yeah, that's exactly, what I was. Yeah, beautifully said, Chris. About what you said a few minutes ago about being able to have a healthy debate and to disagree, but on one topic, but know that the bigger topic is something that we do agree on, and we're going to be able to hone in on that and move forward, even with the disagreements still kind of, there. But we realize that we're together on the big thing, so we can come back to that other part later. I think that's something that we could together, really like remind ourselves first and foremost, because you're only really responsible for yourself, but then try to lead by example for others to kind of like realize that for themselves as well, at least like make the words come out. But yeah, like moral relativism is definitely the huge problem. Moral relativism and solipsism for sure.
I would like
that
to
word
add,
in there.
Sorry about that, James. I would like to add.
Yeah, Brandon, sure.
I'd like to add that it's definitely what Chris was speaking about with, the trauma that we've experienced individually, but also collectively and through our heritage as well. We've been epidysgenically traumatized. So slavery is genetically wired into us at this point, and that's one reason why it's so difficult to break those conditionings, because it's multi-generational. For tens of thousands of years, this has been going on, probably even longer than that. If you go to Douglas Martin's work, it goes on at least 50,000 years. But it's a big issue, because I think, going back to my original point about conspiracies earlier, is that they believe that this stuff is a form of entertainment, right? So conspiracies have become a form of entertainment, and this is why you see documentaries on Netflix and stuff like this, where people are just watching it as a form of escapism now, to escape from their own reality, obviously. And it doesn't actually make them activate. It doesn't actually make them do introspection, onto themselves. It doesn't actually get them interested in applying themselves and being self-actualized, right? So it takes a lot of knowledge about how to get out of the abuse victim cycle on an individual level. And, even though, like, let's say what Chris was talking about, like, we have to start with objective truth and objective morality, right? Well, I know a lot of people that believe in objective morality, but they still haven't healed their own trauma. So they don't self-actualize, so that's the next step. Once you get some of those principles down, once you get your philosophy down, then you have to get activated, right? You have to get out and do something with what you know. So, and I think that's where a lot of people get stuck, and they get stuck in the circles of just kind of bickering back and forth with each other about what egoly identified theory that they bound themselves to, because that makes them the most comfortable in their life. That's the place that they feel comfortable in their own research, because that's what they have researched in. So I like what you guys are talking about, bringing all this to the table. And it is kind of like the Arthurian mythos. It's like the hero cult, It's like we are here to come together with our own ideas and put it on the round table, So we need more discussions like this. And yes, we need more people to kind of bring up ideas that are contradictory to our own. And we need to debate about that and flush it out. We need to flush it out. And that's what anarchism really does, right? Anarchism has always been a philosophy that has challenged the ideas of authority and said, hey, you have to prove to me that your system is morally legitimate and it's based on sound principles and ethics. And if you can't do that, then there's no logical reason that I should be following that system at all. And that's why it's always stood against all forms of tyranny, because like what Fred was bringing up and what Chris was bringing up too, is that this is a spiritual acknowledgement. It has to go back to a spiritual prospect, and that's another thing that we run into in these communities, is you find a lot of nihilism and atheism and just, things that, and agnosticism. Agnosticism isn't as bad as those, but it's still, if you get stuck there, then you're still very immature in your evolution. So we have to heal this trauma, this collective trauma, right? We have to grow together. We have to cultivate this knowledge together.
Yeah. And to conclude on what you're saying, man, like, I don't know who said it or what the quote is from, but aren't we all just walking each other back home on a multidimensional level, in a sense? And understanding the psyops of all the histories that have been rewritten since antiquity and since beyond then, for eons and eons and eons, and all this Anunnaki, Bukaki, Tuvlaki, serving on a silver platter to you to understand a lot of fucking bullshit that ain't even really true. And it's taking away the raw essence of you. Now, what you really want to do is get back to the core essence, learn the proper lessons. And yeah, understand that, yeah, you guys are talking about, we are suffering from multi-dimensional traumas. Yes, even multi-lifetimes of traumas and multi-generational, and, trying to heal these, toxic cycles, even on the 3D level of, our crusty forefathers that, didn't know how to treat a woman or whatever the fuck, right? Because they were just so, programs on a multitude of other programs. And the fact that we're disconnected from source and disconnected from all this junk DNA that we're supposed to have, activated on a 12-strand level at least, type of shit. But to be more practical and all this stuff, like, you guys were talking about some good things, and I'm thinking about a lot of other solutions, and like understanding the problem, and there lies the solution within the problem as well. It's just like the Matrix says, like, hey, Neo, you are a slave. Wake up that neocortex and let that crown chakra light the fuck up and be that shining light for your own life, first and foremost, so you can, pass it on to others, type of thing, And what kind of frequency are we really vibrating on? It's all the fuck over the place, And I see a lot of people's egos unchecked, projecting whatever the fuck as well. So solutions lie so much within oneself. It's like, get your fucking house in order, shrine that into like the golden temple that it's supposed to be, and then, carry on and then do the great work. You do the great work within yourself first and foremost. What is the first cosmic law principle? Y'all know. All about that state of mind, but what about that state of heart?
Right.
In the mind of the heart.
Yep.
Light up that compassion, activated heart chakra shit that will expand the higher and lower chakras and light that shit the fuck up. And I speak upon that experience-wise, not book read-wise. So yeah, I'm gonna pass it on. Rick, what you got, man? I know you know a lot about that shadow work, and we're talking about that.
I'm just listening to you guys. You guys are saying you guys are saying so many incredible things. So I'm just taking it in, and you guys are so right. I've been saying forever that this is a spiritual war. I've been saying it forever, and the problem I'm running into is I talk to a lot of people, and I try to see where they're at, because everybody's different on their journey. We're all at different levels of learning and taking this information in. And the problems I'm running into is I talk to people, and some people I talk to think the world is great the way it is, which boggles my mind when I hear them say that. I don't know. And then a lot of people I talk to will even say that they realize that there is a problem, but it doesn't. I try to guide, and maybe you guys can give me some ideas, because I'm totally open to this. I keep running into the problem where I try to point them in the right the right direction, and give them and on the path of getting into the correct information. And most of the people I talk to have never even heard of natural law, and if they have this twisted view of it, kind of thing. And so I'm running into the problem of trying to point people in the right direction, and people just won't. They're not even willing to take in the information. They're kind of so like granite. I call them, like they're like granite stone. They're so set in their ways that they won't take in this, and they're not even willing to take in information. I keep running into that, and they give me a host of excuses that they don't have the time. They don't think there's really that big of a problem. And so that's the problem I'm running into, is I can't even get people to look into this information, to even take it in. Especially they won't do the shadow work on themselves. That's for sure. A lot of people I talk to about that, they think that everybody else is the problem. I hear, they're always pointing the finger outwards and not inwards. So I'm running into this wall where I talk to people, and they're not even willing to take in this information. So it gets very frustrating for me. So I'm open to some suggestions for that, because I can't even get them to look into this stuff. They're kind of very set in their ways. So it's frustrating.
I for this part there, I have a little bit of experience in this way, because when I'm talking to people, most of them are Satanists, ideological Satanists.
Yeah.
So having this background there and this knowledge helps you to not get into you. First thing, you're doing it without pushing. You can have a convivial conversation and slipping some things right there, but essentially when you're getting them over what their comfort, their security, where they're feeling good in their safe space, okay? Because people most of the time, if you want to really get them, you have to get them out of this safe space, like Marpasu did with us, with all the people he was slapping us around, and I think we need this this bold without pushing, you have to tell them the truth, and what they do with it, it's not it's not yours to to care about it, because there's so much people around who just don't care, you know.
That's true.
They like slavery, they like taxes, they like their roads very, very much, essentially. Who's gonna build the roads, This is what
I hear that all the time. Yep.
yeah,
I hear
you
that all
hear
the time.
it, man. It's
The
crazy.
same people who build them right now.
Yeah, people without the third party, without coercion.
Exactly.
I have a good slide
Yes.
about that in my
cheaper.
presentation for Shattering the Illusion, and
Cool. Yeah.
that's a good subject. But I wanted to comment on something off of Derek. Was talking about the heart-based communication, something I like to call heart-based communication. And what I was saying is you got to recognize where people are at. I think what Rick just alluded to and was also said in the comments by Buddha Cat, you got to see where people are at. And if people are still in a place of moral relativism, you're not going to be able to have certain types of conversation and debate with that person. You're kind of wasting your time. I'm not saying you shouldn't have the conversation with the person. You want to always encourage people to come down the road of realization and recognition, but you're not going to take somebody from moral relativism to recognizing slavery is the condition in the world. Their body physically isn't even ready to deal with that. It would be too much of a shock. You know what I mean? But what we can do is we can work within the community of people we have, is what I was suggesting in my presentations here, like we're doing now. We're having these conversations. We're getting better at our grammar. And like Fred says, if you can stay calm and ask someone some questions, maybe they're going to stay up late that night thinking about some of the questions you might have asked. But if you come even just a little pushy, like I've done over and over, and you try to say, oh, no, they're not going to get it. People have to be ready to learn these things. And so as eager as we are to want to share this knowledge, if someone's not ready, they're just not going to get it. They're just not going to get it until they're ready. So you can communicate with them on a heart-based level. And then the last thing I wanted to end with here before I pass it on was the concept of trust. You have to build trust with people before they're going to listen to you. Right. And the only way to build trust with someone is effective communication. And that we're having trouble with that in the freedom movement, and in the freedom and the health movement. Effective communication to where we can build trust. So that's for us. For other people out there, we got to ask them questions and be patient with them. Heart-based communication, see where they're at.
Very well said.
Well
Yeah.
done, yep.
Anyone want to describe what that entails? Heart-based communication? Because we got 2 ears and 1 mouth, so think about that, before
Well,
speak out of one.
essentially, most people will hear you, but they will not listen.
Yeah,
They're
most
trained
people
to listen for a reaction, to react, not to learn something.
Exactly.
When you're talking to them, they're already thinking about what they're gonna answer you.
They're trying to size you up to the smallest little denomination that their smallest brain cell can fathom. Just kidding,
Yeah.
but anyways. But yeah, it's like it's hard when we're doing all these digital communications on Facebook and whatever, and like, how are we gonna be any kind of catalyst? I've gone through so many different ways and approaches of talking to anyone on any kind of level, and going to the yin and yang, right? The yang energy, that's the masculine, kind of like row sometimes, more external, and the yin is more, like you're trying to just attract them to the truth, right? Just be more subtle and calm and composed and be like, hey, this is what's going on. Like, I care about you. Like, that analogy, like, hey, like your fucking house is burning down. Like, you do something with it, right? And they're like, fuck off, man. Like,
Yep.
Man, like, I really care about you. Like, I don't know if you feel the heat coming down, but like, analogy wise, but you know what I mean. Like, y'all can play off that, but whatever.
Yeah,
You say that, and then they're like, oh yeah, and then they go and throw a bucket of gasoline on it.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Like they don't, but the heart-based communication, right? Is that what you were speaking about? And Fred, what you were saying about people just waiting for their turn to speak, right? That's like a lot of I run into that a lot. You know, I catch myself doing it from time to time where I'm just like, okay, like I already know. It's like I because and it's with certain people that I talk to like every day. It's like, okay, I know where you're going with this. I know the response that I'm going to give, but sometimes I'm surprised, you know. So it's like it's tough, especially when you see it in yourself and you're like, oh, geez. But like with heart-based communication, just like I always just try to get to know somebody and see what they care about, not to exploit it, but to like see how I can communicate with this person, to be on a level with them, to like, do we care about the same stuff? Is there a way for me to speak to them where like I can truly identify with them? You know, I can relate to them. Do they relate to me? You know, am I even the one that's gonna be the guy that they want to listen to? You know, that's the one thing, you know, the great thing about the One Great Work Network is the whole purpose of that was for Mark to have something set up where that choir that he always spoke about for years was actually available, ready and available, where you could just bring somebody to the One Great Work Network and there's the Baskin Robbins of truth, and you can go and find your flavor, and next thing you know, you're off to the races and you're warmed up and ready to go, you know. So I mean, I think that there comes a time where us as, you know, individuals have to kind of be honest if we're not the ones that's going to be able to communicate with them, and then we just kind of take our relationship with that person for what it is. But the seed has been planted, and the one good thing about liars is they always expose themselves eventually. And to bring it back to a lot of stuff we were talking about a little earlier, was a big part of this is that we're all being lied to. And these liars, they expose themselves all the time, you know? So it's just a matter of time. But it could be too late. I'm kind of thinking this through as I'm talking about it right now. But by the time they expose themselves, for a lot of people, it might be too late. And that's what I fear, is that it might be too late, and that a lot of innocent people that just got tricked are going to suffer, like big time, more than we're already suffering. And it's going to be terrible. I want to avoid that. But it's really tough when people are so heavily brainwashed into all of this that, you know, anything that you say that's like counter to the narrative that they've bought into is like stuff that they just literally can't even hear. And they'll say, oh, I can't listen to this. I can't hear this. And it's like, what do you mean? This is your children's lives are at stake. Like, your life is at stake, you know? If you want to be so egotistical, why don't you care about your own fucking life? And you don't. You don't even know how to care. And it's that kind of that kind of like offensive talk that like people don't like, you know, being talked to that way sometimes. I've had.
How do we show them how to care?
How do you show them how to care? It's not something easily done. I don't think that you can really show someone how to care.
You know why? Because it really has to do with people's understanding of value. You know, if you don't understand your own value in this universe or in this reality, it's like seems kind of trivial, right? Like I've often thought about the psyche of all people at the time when they were, you know, first talking about these bombs that could blow up whole countries, right? Everybody in the whole country has to learn to duck and cover. What does that do to the psyche of people when you think that your whole existence could be wiped out in any moment at somebody else just pushing a button, right? There's that type of power and technology in the world. It's putting people in a very, very sad, low place where they don't see their own power. And if you see this existence as a spiritual existence, and that you're part of the interconnectedness with God and the universe that's learning through every moment, then you understand the immense value of this experience, and that every moment is your opportunity to be part of this growing, amazing thing of nature of God. And when you recognize how amazing that is, then you don't want to take any opportunity to let life die, to let anything fall through the cracks. You care about it. You actually have passion. And, you know, a good way to start is read stories about people that have had near-death experiences. You know, how many of those people come back and just want to watch Netflix every night? I guarantee you not very many of them.
That's so true. Yeah.
You know, something about the point of like, did you say how to teach someone how to care? Like, how do you teach someone to care, or how do you show someone how to care? I think that like sometimes you got to give them a little bit of tough love and kick them in the butt and just like say things that are going to get a visceral response out of them. And then you go, see, I told you, because if you didn't care, you wouldn't be getting angry. If you didn't think I was right, you'd be happy enough to just go and walk on by. And it's like when I talk to people about public schools and I go, well, if you're at this point in time, if you're still sending your children to public schools, I have to question how much you really care about your children. And the response I get to that, people want to fight me. I've had family members just not even talk to me anymore. There's been years since I talked to some of my family members because of that statement.
There's a lot of ego issues just involved with parenting, and
yeah, if I were wrong about that, then you'd have no problem just
that sucks
letting it go. But deep down inside, I'm correct. You know that it's so. Yeah, sometimes you gotta, I think, get them angry, and that could. Shit, man, it might not be a response that you like, but at least they're giving some sort of emotional response. And psychopaths are jealous of our ability to have a full range of emotions, and that includes anger. So
and wielding that correctly, right? Transmuting it towards something that's going to be used for positive means and stuff. And that's kind of the whole issue with the whole awakening process, right? Oh, like everyone knows, once the truth is going to first piss you off, but then it's going to set you free or whatever. But what are people doing with the energy that's pissing them off? Are they going to be, causing a lot of self-inflicted suffering, the victimizer type of dynamic type of thing? Or are they really going to get themselves out of that rut and bust out like that phoenix out of the ashes that got burned in the fucking Athanor? If they done the work properly, right? That alchemical process, y'all know the Athanor, right? And really soar to the higher heights of the higher vibrations that gets out of that lower vibratory state that Chris was talking about, that, everything is, systematically putting us under, And then we try to build up that fertile ground to that higher plateau of that common ground that we can all, because here's the thing. We're all people, right? I feel like we have more commonalities than differences. And why are we getting so hung up on all the differences and, the drama-based mind control, right? I did a play off of the whole trauma-based mind control, but what about drama-based mind control? Because y'all were talking about how people are so addicted to, like, looking into the negative things, and, like, people are so, drawn towards, the drama going on and the gossip and all this minutia bullshit. And that's kind of what Chris was talking about as well, is like people are drawn and programmed and conditioned towards staying in that lower vibratory level, and so that's what they're addicted to in a sense. So we're trying to raise the bar, raise the standard, and raise that common ground, and we're like, hey, I was just like you, like, you can do so much better. We have so much more potential within ourselves in this life. I mean, like, I want to do like a million things. I'm like on the edge of my seat sometimes, like, what the fuck can I do? And I've been unemployed for a good amount of time, just not resting on my laurels, but thinking like, how can I give my time the most efficiently and make this something I could live off of the, obviously the bullshit, monetary, whatever the fuck, right? Paper value money that isn't worth what it's printed on the paper and all that shit. But, the goal is to help people to the highest good. I'm in it for the fucking win-win. And why am I not hearing that throughout the vast echo chambers of every single rabbit hole you could go down to? There's hundreds of channels of fucking, anything, flat earth and even Tartaria now and whatever the fuck. It's great, like, look into all these things, but at the same time, like, recenter as far as like what the definition of real meditation is, and man, fucking assimilate the good stuff and take out the bad shit and realize that we're still in a state of slavery, and we need our brothers and sisters to really come together and make that fucking convergence, like the beautiful conference y'all had last week. And I was blessed to have a little snippet of music playing out the intro the second day, and actually just released today music mix that's really coincides to all y'all. And there's Joe Murray and John Rowland that are up in there that were in the Convergence conference just wanted to plug that in, and that's all.
Derek, you make music?
I mix music, actually. I do like soundtracks to all types of levels of awareness and what the hell is going on, and just a lot of spiritual, uplifting vibes and shit like that.
Oh, cool.
I was over here snapping and clapping and knee slapping while you were busting out that rapping. Just while you're talking.
Thank you, brother, man.
As long as you're not fapping.
Yeah.
But I thought of a good metaphor, well, right before you were talking there, I had this kind of thought, I was talking about the value, here's a metaphor to stick in your head. Imagine you're standing, at the bus station and you're holding a cigarette out in your hand, and someone walks by and slaps that cigarette out of your hand, right? As pissed off as you might be, you're probably going to let it go. Cigarette costs like $1 or whatever. You can get another one for 50 cents, right? Now imagine, on the other hand, if you're holding your baby and someone walked by and slapped your baby out of your hand, how are you going to react? And that's the difference what we have in this world of people valuing this life and this existence and every moment as if it's just a cigarette. And it's like, fuck it, I'll get another one, right? But if you look at it like that's your baby and they're stealing your baby, that's what's really going on. There's child trafficking going on. There's human slavery going on. There's tunnels underground and they're trafficking people. And these are the people running our planet. How pissed off should you be? That's not just the cigarette. That's a lot worse, And when people have that understanding and level of compassion for other human beings, there's going to be no thought as to what should be done. What do you do when someone slaps your baby out of your hand? You don't just stand there and let them go by.
I wanted to make a joke.
I
wanted to make a joke about it depends on how many cigarettes I have left.
That's true.
That's a little tasteless. It's not a very good taste joke. But anyways, that's why I think that we bring it back full circle to teaching people about objective morality and natural law first and foremost. And the principles like the non-aggression principle and self-defense principle, because if these things get taught and really thoroughly taught about just what it means to be non-aggressive, and Brandon said we should start calling it the non-violence principle. A while back Brandon and I had a talk, and he's like, you know what, we should probably start calling it like the non-violence principle, because sometimes you do need to show a little aggression. It's like, let's use better words, better define things. But anyways, I think that with a firm understanding of these principles and objective morality in there as well, then the rest of the stuff kind of exposes itself to people. And then what you're talking about, Chris, with oh shit, I lost it. But I think that really is the answer, though, is it really does come back to all of that. And then the government doing the things that they do, people go, wait a minute, that's not fucking right. I don't support violence, so I'm not supporting that anymore. So I'm out. And more,
masculine.
And so it kind of works itself out in the end. I really like what Douglas put in the chat too, by the way. Douglas, I know you're watching this, Douglas. Really good stuff from Douglas Martin there. That's absolutely 100% true, by the way. So there was another point I was going to make, but I forgot it already. So anyways, get me off the big screen.
So there's something that we need to talk about, and it's belief and worldview. And I think this one is big in all this and all the direction possible. And I have this pattern there in the freedom movement. There's an influx of New Agers now, and you have these New Age, this science New Agers now. It's getting mixed up together. So you have these people who are pushing dialectics in their own doctrines. So yeah, you have these people who talk about quantic reality, and the matrix, and they're saying that mostly moral relativists, and solipsists. It's all learned in the New Age. In the fact that they're saying that we can change. We cannot change this. We cannot change the laws. You cannot, and because sometimes I stumble upon these people who are considering themselves truthers, and they're still stuck in this statiist mindset, and they want to solve the problem with the same problem, with the same old, I'm gonna start another political party. I'm gonna do a shadow work in groups. We're gonna convince people that the secret is the best thing in the world. All this relativists
In the movie, the book, The Secret.
The semantics. The people are getting caught up into semantics, and they're arguing about trivial things like the shape of the earth. And I this thing there, I just want to say this: if you're still stuck in there, you're wasting your fucking time. Okay, we're this is not even fucking relevant for a solution. It's not even a solution. We have truth out there stuck in this like Brendan said earlier, this conspiracy spiral, and they cannot get out of it. And they're bringing us with them. We're getting mixed up, and we have these people who mix religion and spirituality. They're mixing these two things together, and it's dangerous.
Bro, man. Yeah.
And it's fucking dangerous, because you have these people who are like, oh, I'm gonna pray God and everything is gonna be fine. I'm telling you, God doesn't give a fuck about you.
Yeah,
That's true. I'm not gonna sugarcoat like these things. We're grown ass people. We're gonna tell the things how they are, and not gonna hide behind politeness. Thanks to Brendan for his beautiful, inspiring quotes.
Fake ass punks, yo. That's what's up.
Oh, yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I'd like to add a few things. You guys covered so many great things here in just the past few minutes. I'd like to go back to how we teach people. And I think one thing is that we have to understand that everybody has a different way of learning. So we see what happens in the education system, that it's all robotic, right? It's all strict, and they never approach the individual based upon the way that they learn. They never learn how the child may learn. So on a personal level, whenever you're working with people in the personal arena, you're going to have to start to really strategically look at them and understand their emotions and understand the way they think, and then try to plant those seeds of truth within them and allow them to develop them, and give them that chance. One thing I see in the freedom community that's a big issue is people expect instant gratification. And I don't think that this is going to be a problem that's going to be solved in one generation. I think this is going to be a lot more work than what most people expect it to be. Could it be solved in one generation? Yeah, but I just don't think it's realistic, especially when you start to look at all of the doctrines, all of the texts, all the literature out there, right? Because on a fundamental level, the common person isn't going to debate you at a sophisticated level. But for me, for example, I've ran into scholars, I've ran into philosophers, I've ran into professors. And when you start to talk to them about moral relativism and objective morality, if you go into a college and you try to debate a professor of philosophy on moral relativism and objective morality, most of the people in community would be completely laughed out of that room. Absolutely, because they have not dove deep enough within how to formulate their arguments properly for that kind of sophistication. So we have to understand. That's why I said we need to take it back to scholarship, because we're going to
grammar.
Right, we're going to have to deal with those types of people as we move forward in the community. Now, of course, the mass majority of us are not going to have to deal with that. So it's important to get to your neighbors and the people who are not like that. But you will run into those people, okay? You are going to run into the theologists of Christianity. You are going to run into the professors of philosophy. And they are going to be master manipulators with their theories, and you're going to have to be able to navigate those theories, and that's a really big and tough challenge. But if you think these things thoroughly through, all the way down to the fundamentals, and you can explain your arguments better, based on truth, then that's what happens in debates. But I see debating, it can be positive and negative. So if you look at the great philosophers of old, we're still debating about the same issues that the philosophers were debating about thousands of years ago. And that's part of the issue with that, is that even though they've come to those conclusions about objective truth in a lot of their communities, it still hasn't stuck, and they're still debating about it. It's just it's kind of like the conspiratorial mindset. They just keep going with it because it's fun. They get attached to it,
Psyops too.
Yeah, it's a big psyops as well. But we're going to have to fundamentally deal with history. We're going to have to deal with a lot of stuff. So I'm not trying to set the bar so high that people feel like it's impossible, because it's not, because we all can do our own thing on our own levels and make a difference in our own lives. And that's why I wanted to bring this to the table too, is like, we talk a lot about doing inner work and we talk about shadow work. And I'm really glad that you brought that up the last time too, that great page about shadow work. I think that's a great community, and she's doing amazing work there. But I think that a lot of people tend to get stuck on these terms, and they don't talk about like how you really get that done, right? Like when you say internal work, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by internal work? Because what I see, and it reminds me of a movie I watched actually, and it's about a cult, and it's called Split Image. And they had this kind of hippie communist, cult, and it looked all great on the outside. It was done in the daylight. It was kind of like a Jim Jones thing, It looked just magical to people, right? And all these kids were like, oh yeah, I'm going to join up, and, and they're all eating vegan food, and, it's all nice. And then you realize there's a hierarchy and a master manipulator. But one of the kids in there who's being indoctrinated, he asked the same question, because they're saying the same rhetoric in that cult. They're saying, like, oh yeah, it all starts within. And yes, it does. That's a true statement. But what do you mean by it starts within? Where do you start? How do you fundamentally get someone to understand that? Because we're going to have to deal with people who have mental conditions. And this is, I don't want to be talking about too much negative stuff here, but I think people's neocortex are so damaged that they fundamentally aren't going to be able to critically think enough or critically feel enough to relate with you on a lot of these things. So you have to give them time to biologically heal, and it takes a lot of therapy. Not only self-therapy, because the only way that you can really start any kind of self-healing is by being ready. We know this with addiction. We know this through ourselves and understanding that it was us who actually started that journey. But also, there's no real help in the communities for people who have mental conditions. And where do we see people with mental conditions in an anarchist society? How do we deal with them? How do we deal with a schizophrenic patient, who absolutely will never be able to adhere to a lot of the principles that we're talking about here? And we find these people to be more common than not. If you start looking around, just walk down the streets of any big city, you're going to run into a lot of mentally disabled people. So we have to really start asking deeper questions about that, because, I think Leslie said something about this earlier too, is that natural law is not just an intellectual study, it's an intuitive study. A lot of natural law has to be intuitive, and it's a spiritual aspect. So a lot of the scientists and the atheistic and the left brainers, they're going to have a big issue understanding that. But it doesn't mean you can't get to them, because natural law is also based upon empiricism, because you can show the consequences of it, right? But for people with brain damage, right, and I have personal experience with dealing with people with brain damage, and it's very difficult because it takes time for these people to heal. And I think that's one of the problems that I'm trying to bring up here, is that people start to they start to really attack each other emotionally when people don't adhere to these ideas, because we're all suffering and we're like, oh my God, you're part of this problem. You're the one who's, enabling and condoning these actions, or maybe even doing these actions yourself, and we need to understand that we need to check ourselves a little bit and understand that everybody is at their own level of consciousness, and they're at their own level of biological health. And that's why health is so crucial. Biological health is so crucial to the awakening. So I think one solution I would apply here is that we need more communities with people who are in the know of natural law and the esoteric traditions and the mystery schools and things like this, that can also help with psychological issues, help with biological and psychological issues simultaneously. We need more therapeutic group effort, because sometimes you can't just do it on your own. Some of that work you can't do on your own, and we know this. That's why we are at some level social beings, so we know that, hey, it's really good to have other people who have went through this, who have, healed themselves, and I can be around them and they can enlighten me to their experience of how they dealt with these issues. And, we also have to understand people will regress. They'll go back, and it's like a rubber band method, they'll awaken for a little bit and then they'll snap back. Right. So we have to be able to work through these things. And my final statement is that we're really in our adolescent phases of all this. Not only are we in our adolescent phases spiritually, ultimately, we're also in our adolescent phases of communication, because we've never had communication like this before. So we can't really say that we know that the internet isn't working to our advantage at a mass level, because we're still figuring it out. It's still so chaotic. So give it another 10 or 20 years, and I'm not saying slavery should go on for that much, but I'm saying that it's going to take time for us to understand these new levels of communication that we have. And as we get better with that, we'll see better results. And as these ideas start to spread and decentralize throughout the web and the ether and the Akashic records and consciousness, it's going to start to sink in a lot more. But we have to be patient, and we got to stay vigilant and persevere with all that.
Great points.
Excellent.
Something about the brain damage that you're speaking about, Brandon, is like, accidents aside, a lot of what we're seeing manifest today with people with psychological disorders and whatnot is caused by unnecessary trauma that is done upon them that can be a clear violation of their God-given rights.
Needlecraft, what?
And like they get these children. My presentation next week is about this. Children getting medicated from the time that they're like 6 years old on psychotropic drugs.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like things like that are fucking them up for the rest of their lives. They gave no consent to do that. They don't even have the ability to consent. They don't understand the long-term consequences. You cannot understand the long-term consequences unless you've lived the long-term consequences. So there is no real way to consent to that. And, so when it comes to drugging children particularly, this is something that, in my opinion, should stop. But there are accidents that happen, and how do we accommodate for people like that? I mean, I see a comment in the chat about it taking great patience and insight, and being able, and that couldn't be more true. I appreciate Buddha Cat for putting that in the chat. I can rhyme too. It's just all about time. and so I mean that's a very complicated. What you're talking about, Brandon, it's a very complicated piece of the puzzle, because on one hand we want our cake now, right? We all, but on the other hand, we realize that it's really an unreasonable thing to want at the time. So what do? We kind of like keep the end goal in mind of one day, perhaps, maybe, you know, if we keep going down this road and keep talking about the principles and keep trying to wake more people up, if we're doing that, then I think we're lessening the kinds of harm that we can, and we're preventing future people from becoming automatons while promoting autonomy. And I think that that's something that we can really hone in on. And I love this quote by Hyacinth Loyson, and he said, "Blessed are those who plant trees under whose shade they will never sit."
Yeah.
And
Yes.
that to me is one of the hardest hitting quotes that I've ever heard in my life. And as a father, it's inspiring to be in that mind frame where, like, my life is not as like, I have a meaningful life. I know that I can do a lot while I'm here, but that life is going to be over one day. And what did I do while I was here? Did I make the world a better place? Did I carry that torch? Did I not let the flame die out? These are the types of questions I ask myself so I can better be of service to the rest of my fellow people and earthlings, really. You know, but like, that to me is like something that I keep in mind when I'm talking about you know, people that may not have. Does natural law apply to the people that do not, that have a that have like brain damage? Because as people that are like conscious beings, right, like, that's the popular definition, that it applies to conscious beings that can understand the difference between right and wrong. So where does that line get drawn for human? It's not human beings, done. It's conscious beings with the ability to understand the difference between right and wrong. Now, if there's a person that literally, like, is impossible, physically, mentally impossible for them to understand the difference between right and wrong, natural law doesn't apply to them. Which is like, so that's when we become more accommodating, where Buddha Cat says, taking great patience and insight, you know, and hopefully one day, you know, we can at least stop the stuff that we're the ones doing, you know. I don't know.
I think that's well said. Yeah.
So there's something I wanted to bring up because I think if we forget that we are all from the same family. You know, we're people. Why people do not know? It's because they don't know principles. All they own is lies. Until you start doing the right work and you start doing the shadow work. So you cannot, something that there's a quote that I want to bring up because it's so true. We will never get rid of mental illness, because the mental illness is the civilization, is the culture. So if you want to break up the chains of this, you need to break the culture. You need to rebuild, not with laws, not with biases, but with principles. This is how we grow up as humans, with principles. For an example, you're in the Chris, you mentioned it, the end of all evil. Jeremy Locke says in his book that principles are like you walking on a road and you're stumbling on a rock, and then afterward, when you're getting back to this path, you're gonna be careful, and you're not going without knowing. You're gonna know that if you walk there, you're gonna be stumbling about, and I think humans, we sadly for now, we're like that. We cannot. We are living in the causality of things. We're not living in the effect. So people are doing like children when they're experimenting and they're doing things, and from time to time they're getting hurt. And I think for now this is how we understand. But in the best scenario, I think people should, like the kids at young age, should be like they should know these things at young age, like self-esteem and respect and moral ethics and things like that. I'm not talking about the necessarily accidental moral ethics. I'm talking about based on the golden rule and based on the natural law and the law of cause and effect and correspondence and mentalism and all these beautiful things that we must know, like rhythm.
Yeah.
Rhythm is you can see it everywhere. When you have the eyes to see, you can see it everywhere. Cyclic is cycles in your own life, cycle in your mind, cycle in cultures, cycles in society and governments. They're everywhere, and that and rhythm. Because somebody talked about, I think it's Brendan. He talked about the balance effect. So we're pushing the occult knowledge, and then there's always this swing back. So the fact that we're doing this work, there's going to be a counter force to it, and this is where we have to be ready.
We're swimming against the current, aren't we? I mean, like,
exactly,
the occulting things. I mean, like, we're trying to unsuppress the knowledge that's, there's like a pressure and like. But what happens when a certain substance falls under so much pressure? It rises like that diamond out of the coal, shining bright forever. Right?
what?
A coal under pressure is going to, produce that diamond that's going to shine bright and make the darkness conscious, if you will. Right?
Like our words being forged like swords. We
Yep.
we do it by
Forged
turning
in
them
fire.
over and heating them up and turning them
Yep.
over. And I think that's an important point to remember for us. We come along this journey of understanding things and researching things, and we feel like, oh, I got it all figured out now. I try to remember that before I was in my late 30s when I really came to certain recognitions, and I kind of had like this awakening matrix experience. And I often remind myself of that time because, like, a month, 2 months, a year before that moment, I didn't realize those things. And so for each of us, there's still things to be realized, right? There still we could meet someone tomorrow or the next day who brings us some knowledge and some information that brings our understanding to a new level. If we start getting to this point where, like, oh, I know everything, I got all the answers, then we become the asshole who won't listen to other people. And so when other people
Yep.
come to us and they say, hey, I got this thing I want you to hear about, then we need to have the patience to hear them and hear their story and think about it. I've had people come to me with all kinds of different subjects, and the more I think about them, I've like say, well, I'm not going to make up my mind on this. I'm going to let it stick inside my mind, and I'm going to give it some thought. I'm going to do some more research on it. I did that when I was suspicious in the beginning of COVID, and my whole perspective on disease has completely changed. Even the flat earth, I mean, people really get down on people for bringing that up, but I've seen some presentations and points of view on that subject that are very intriguing and brought me to the point where I have new realizations, and I'm reading books now that I wouldn't have read have people not brought those to my attention. So it's important that I would say that we keep ourselves open and realize that we still have a lot to realize, and that if we have that attitude, then we might be able to speak better, like heart-based communication, to other people as well, if they see that curiosity in us and that willingness to like realize something new and not pretend like, oh, I know it all, I got all the solutions, I watched all Mark's podcasts, I don't need to know anything else. How are you gonna get there?
Yeah, and you bring up some great points, Chris. Real quick, just to throw in just something that someone can feed off of or not. But how do you guys observe people kind of like in any kind of echo chamber? We're talking about the truth community more or less, I suppose. But there's this tendency, and it's like part of the whole deprogramming process. But I see a lot of people still kind of being quick to size someone else up, just on the internet, talking shit on the internet like it's the '90s type of. It's like, come on, are we not evolved in a sense? But just like, oh well, what do you know? Did you wake up yesterday? Type of thing, and it's like you're literally talking to a Johnny come lately. In a sense, you can just get that vibe about them, and it's not about sizing them up, but you can feel into these things. If you interacted with enough people, you can kind of get a sense of where they're at, emotionally and level of awareness, whatever. And I just, I really try to have patience with these people, not try to like, oh, we always, that knee-jerk reaction that can be so satisfying, and we've probably all been guilty of it, of giving that person their own medicine in a sense, right? And people come at you with talking out their ass, or with their hubris or whatever the fuck, right? And you can just take that and flip that script and be, I wouldn't say diplomatic with that, because that's kind of a charged word, right? For the but you know what I mean? Just like show that level of compassion and patience, right? And just like what these projections that are thrown at us, there's it's nothing personal. We don't have to take this shit personal and throw their shit back at them. We can just be like, look, little homie, like I understand the frustrations and whatever, this and that. Like, we don't have to agree on everything, but at the same time, like, we ain't gotta leave on a sour note. Like, what's good? Like, what are you into? What are you trying to do? Like, what is your focus on? Like, what are you trying to, what is your purpose in life? Like, are you about that freedom? Are you like interested in natural law and in those sacred principles that go beyond the 7 hermetic ones? Because that's like the rudimentary stuff that we can all build way beyond. But as far as like your guys' interactions with people and how you guys have been able to like alchemize that and kind of make them kind of realize their own immaturities or whatever.
We're gonna have Leslie that's gonna join us for a few minutes.
Cool.
Cool. Right on.
So,
bye, Chris.
Thank you, Chris, for being there, man. Appreciate it.
Ciao, Chris.
Yeah.
So he offered this place for but don't worry. In October we're gonna be at least 10.
Nice.
So it's gonna be awesome.
That'll be amazing. Yep.
Yeah.
So here we go. Hi,
Hi,
sister.
Leslie.
Hi, Leslie.
Gosh, hey, you guys are having a great conversation. I've been sitting there in the chat, like, excited.
Yeah.
Welcome. You wanted to
Thunder.
add something about what could heal the freedom movement and the anarchist movement and
Mhm.
even
Yeah,
the
there's
spiritual one.
a lot of points, and just to kind of I guess just emphasize what. Oh, really? Can you hear me?
Oh, it's been you
it's
this whole
Brendan's.
time.
Are you? Can you hear me?
No, we
Yeah.
can hear you.
No, we can hear you.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to just jump off of what Chris and Derek were just saying about kindness, really, and compassion. And as frustrated as we may be and passionate about what we think we know, and what we do know, that sometimes we turn away the people who are kind of tenderly stepping towards us. And so again, that's about having lots of people in talking in their own voices, and some are going to be rough and some are going to be gentle, and we need all of that. And but I think what I'd like to see in I like what Brandon was saying about this being a group of scholarship, really, and I think that, and also a place of heart-based communication and compassion. So with each other and with the audience that we're trying to reach, and to be very patient. That really is the sentence of the day.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you, Leslie.
Mm-hmm.
How would you deal with sociopaths and narcissists in this when it comes to when this comes to the great work or any occult knowledge?
Well, non-aggression principle is balanced by the self-defense principle, and self-defense, I think, happens at a lot of different levels. It doesn't always mean you pull out a gun or a sword or whatever. Sometimes it's saying no, it's setting boundaries, and to set boundaries with another person, there needs to be an awareness of yourself and a knowledge of yourself to even know what's going on, right? From a bird's eye view, what's going on. And a lot of people are just falling for the bait, and they're jumping for that clickbait kind of excitement of, debating about the topic, getting stuck in those cul-de-sacs on the side and missing the whole point. And I want to be careful that we don't create some of that, and that we really operate from our hearts and with patience, and teaching the core principles as true scholars. And I liked what Brandon really said about us really upping our game to be able to understand the principles we're talking about, and to be able to give examples and to help other people understand why it's important. It's so important. And that's what blows my mind, is people who I know kind of want the same world and understand what's going on to a point. They're not tuning into these discussions and really getting why it's so important. So that's my conundrum. Anyway, that's all.
I'd like to add on to that a little bit. I think rehabilitation is a potential for people. And I think what we see is that a lot of people want to aggressively or violently attack people rather than seek rehabilitation. I've dealt with a lot of narcissists in my own life, and obviously there's a point where you have to draw a line, and self-defense is necessary. And like what Leslie says, there's many different forms of self-defense, but we don't have a system of rehabilitation for these kinds of psychopathologies that's suitable to help this, because a lot of these psychopathologies is also perpetuated by the system itself. So we're kind of in this circular feedback loop where we have an issue where we need to get through to people and heal them and rehabilitate them. But also at the same time, some of that healing can only take place once we have sanctuary, right? So growth takes place when you're out of the fight and flight mechanism. And so everybody's in fight and flight, everybody's in survival. So we need sanctuary for people, and there's not really any sanctuary. That's why getting out of the cities can be really helpful for people, getting into solitude, getting away from all of not only the negative vibrations, but also all of the conditioning and propaganda and mind control and, the constant, every day, constant movement, just doing stuff all the fucking time. And so I think that's something I talked about a long time ago, which is we don't see an effort in rehabilitation. And this is what I like to bring up. I know we are running out of time here, but I see that a lot of people don't understand that we are going to have some form of due process for when we have issues take place, natural law does take care of a lot of this stuff. But let's say we have a serial killer running around, right? Well, how do we deal with that? And how do we prove that person is actually the serial killer? How are we going to deal with these things, these systems of justice without a system of government? Because people confuse government with a system of justice, and those are not, together. They don't have to be together. You can have a system of justice without a system of government. You can have set guidelines that are based upon natural law, and they don't have to be arbitrary, immoral, and moral relativistic ideas of victimless crimes and all this stuff. And and we see this. It's kind of what the founding fathers and what Brian was trying to talk about a little bit. How does a system of anarchy really deal with those things? Though I don't believe a constitutional republic is the way you do that. I think that's obviously failed. So we're going to have to ask deeper questions about not only how to help the mentally ill and how to rehabilitate them. And that might not be for us, but there are people out there with those skills, and they can help with those. That's why it's the great work, because it's collective. And the other thing is how are we going to deal with not getting caught up in witch hunts where we just go out and believe everybody's emotional outbursts, like some person who claims they got raped, and then it's like a 16-year-old girl and really she didn't get raped, which you see that all the time. You know, like people are ready to go and lynch people for these things, and it's a big issue. We don't want to fall into that kind of fervor, and we don't want to fall into that kind of witch hunt. You know, because that's what's always diminished societies in the past is those witch hunts, right? That's why the the Library of Alexandria was destroyed. It's because of witch hunts. You know, it's because of censorship. It's because of this type of mindset. They're connected, so we have to be very cautious about these things.
Oh, you have this echo chamber on social media too. This is an all other podcasts we could do, like just talking about this. You know,
Yeah.
the ramification of social media and how it makes people miserable. You know.
Yeah.
And how we can rush some of those too.
You sure
that'd
could.
be a great topic. Great topic.
And I think to be more specific to what Brandon's saying is to talk about how would we deal with the mentally ill and the brain injured in anarchic society. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, it's a big question, and I
It
don't
is.
I don't hear people with that kind of rhetoric. You know, I hear people saying buzz terms a lot, and I know that's like we want to simplify things for people so that it catches on, and it's really a lot easier to approach people like they have a child mindset, because most adults do have a child mindset. You are going to run across those questions as you get out and start communicating with people. That's one of the biggest questions I've ever had to deal with as an anarchist. You know, is like, how do you deal with foreign invaders if you have a community of anarchism? How do you deal with domestic, issues? And we're going to have to solve those. And, I'm not going to tell you that I have all those answers, but I know some resources that can point to people who have thought about it in great detail. So one more thing I like that is you were talking about how do we deal with narcissists and things like that. Well, there's one thing called the free market, which I don't think is a complete solution, but it also does help. It's one solution, right? So it can't help because you can ostracize people from services, right? And you can have this sort of barrier, this firewall against people who have harmed the community. And they have, this is what the old, totemic societies used to do. They would ostracize the psychopath or the sociopath or someone who's mentally ill who will not change and who cannot be rehabilitated. They say go back to nature. Go back to nature and let nature deal with you. One issue with that though is that we got cities everywhere on this world. They're not completely everywhere. Obviously, there's plenty of land for people. We're not overpopulated or anything, but they're going to run into other people somewhere. It's not like they're just going to go out in the woods. Most people are not just going to go out in the woods and live on their own. They don't know how to do that. They just die out there. They've lost all this life. But it is an option. You do have the option as a community to ostracize people who are doing harm. And if they keep coming back, well, then you take it further. And then you take it to the true self-defense mechanism of action. And you might have to put it down, like what Mark says. And you're just going to have to deal with that. That's what you're going to have to deal with. So.
Right.
The inner psychopath, right? That's
the inner psychopath,
having the psychopath, right?
Having the
psychopath. But like that's how you start instilling, these principles in a community is by, hey, this is cause and effect. You're right. Like stop being a dick. stop being stop acting violent.
Look around and find out.
Exactly. And with these principled approaches, like honestly, like it's a slow burn of solution where a principled approach being taught not only to yourself, but then carried over to your children. And then, it's a slow burn process of solutions. When we come at things from a principled approach based on like non-aggression and self-defense, then we get a chance to exploit other, and I don't like using the word exploit. I just can't think of another one at the time right now. So bear with me, please. But like we get a chance to kind of give examples of cause and effect based off of principles like the self-defense principle. Well, if you're going to go around and touch children, like you guess what's going to happen to you, and everyone's going to see that, and look how quickly we solve that problem.
What's up with the president we have right now?
Right. Well, that's another thing. From a principled approach, we don't deal with people that want to exert authority over others when they have absolutely no right to. And we're going to make an example of you too. So yeah, you can be exiled. They did that to Napoleon. You can exile people.
Yep.
Sure, that
Remember the good
works.
old tar and feathering days?
Good old tar and feathering. But
Tar and
the thing
feathering,
about
yeah.
exiled people is they tend to come back.
Come back. Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
And like that's the bad part about exile. But it's a soft approach at getting someone to get the point. And if you don't learn from your mistakes, then you obviously have no grasp on reality and how natural law works with the principle of cause and effect. So we're gonna turn it up a little bit, and you
What
get
do you
maybe a third strike, and you're done. You're done. We're
What do
gonna
you
take
guys think about prisons or jail? Is there a place?
Oh, it really, honestly, as a person who's been in one of those places, it's a terrible fucking place to be for somebody who's nonviolent. And I mean, if you're caught red-handed doing something, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I'm a pro-life person, so I'm against the death penalty, really, like when it comes down to it. But I will defend myself up to the point of including me actually killing someone in self-defense, against the death penalty, because I don't think the government should have any say in that. Okay, but a person defending themselves, absolutely. So it's like a delineation that needs to be made on my part. But prisons and county jails and stuff like that, I would say that the vast majority of people that are in there the first time they go is for something that's completely nonviolent, and that starts a cycle that produces a violent criminal. So if we stop enforcing nonviolent crimes, and as a community come together and realize that from time to time somebody just needs a little hug. When I got sent to jail, it wasn't for a very long time, but somebody very, very important to me in my life had just died, and I went a little nuts. I went and did some things that I'm not very proud of, and I ended up in a fucking jail cell, and I was there for a while, and all I really needed was somebody to talk to that actually seemed to fucking care about what was going on with me as a kid. And then, I was a young adult. So speaking from experience, like, I did something completely nonviolent. I stole things, I didn't hurt anybody. Let's put it that way. 'Cause theft is still kind of, it's in my opinion, like on the outer rim, but it's still violent action. I've learned that since. But there's kind of a scale when it comes to how much of a drastic measure are you willing to take to kind of teach someone a lesson. And when you're sending someone to like a jail for something that's seemingly like, oh, you didn't shed blood, you didn't kill anyone, you didn't do anything that the modern parlance would recognize as violent action, right? So like, a kid like me ending up in there, I got into fights. I got into fights like all the time, and I had to defend myself physically. And then I got into verbal altercations that I'm looking around. I'm like, okay, like this is going to lead to something really bad if I don't do something about this. So I had to be the perpetrator of violent action on somebody, because words aren't violence. Like, face it, words aren't violence. You can have a banter back and forth. You can have a screaming match back and forth with somebody, call names, whatever you want. It's not violent. But the second you start laying hands on people, it's pretty violent. And I've had to do that to people in my life because I know what's about to happen to me if I don't. And it's a very intimidating situation. It's tough to describe, but like, you think that people are looking at you like you're some kind of bitch, and that if you don't do something, then you're the next one that's going to be, everyone's going to just take advantage of you. So it's really terrible. And the statistics on the repeat offenders of somebody that's been in prison or been in a county jail, because they are two different things. So the statistics there, that somebody that's actually been in one of those facilities actually getting out and being a repeat offender of what got them there, or finding something new to do that's going to get them back there anyways, it's incredibly high. A lot of people that you commit a crime, it's your first offense. If there's some kind of reform that you can take and actually show that, like, and this is where we fall off as a society, is that like, you don't really care. People that are in charge of this community, this society, or whatever, they don't give a fuck, and people know it. All they care about is money. So if we get back to that real, heart-based care, if we really get back to that part about care, a lot of healing can take place. But if also if we really stop doing violence to one another, if we learn how to do that, then there's another approach to healing. But I really do think that that prisons and jails are unnecessary, and that if somebody's a murderer, then like honestly, like the person that I don't have all the answers, but I do know that prisons and jails are very, very unnecessary when it comes down to it. You know, it's a fucking terrible place. I was there when I was 18, and it's a terrible place to be when you're a kid. When all of a sudden, like, you're standing around a bunch of grown men who are like Latin Kings and MS-13 and like Crips
no,
and stuff like that, and you're like this little skinny kid, you know, from some like some suburb like that's just got caught doing some shady shit, and it's a very scary thing to be going through, you know. And you know, especially it's tough.
I've been to jail 3 times, but kind of in and out, just a couple days here and there, like just on non-violent shit. Just but to bring it back with Leslie's really great question. I mean, like, I think the whole prison system needs a fresh fucking reformation. I'm sorry, I got no light on me, but it's all good. Shadow work, yo.
Working from the shadows, Shia LaBeouf.
Yeah, man. I mean, what's really going on? What's lurking in the shadows of all these prison systems that, yes, they're all money-making fucking schemes for the state and all this shit, and they're pumping out, you know, all types of new criminals, you know, that, you know, from people that were never of the sort to begin with. So all that aside, like, what's the new vision? What is the better alternative from our conscious minds? Like, forget the fucking prison systems in this fucking square box with the jail cells and the metal bars and all that shit. With all these fucking, and like the personalities, James, that you had to deal with, the personnel that works in those facilities. What in the fuck? It's like they really, you know, like, but they've been through so many hard times. I mean, like, what they've been subjected to, like, imagine all the older followers that had to go through the training camps and all that shit, that had their soul kind of sucked out of them already from that, you know, I wouldn't call it education, but diseducation or whatever, right? Conditioning. And then they get to be around all these hardcore motherfuckers in the prison system and all this shit. And I don't mean to say motherfuckers as a derogatory term. I'm sorry, brothers and sisters that are all locked up. Whether you did the crime or not, all that, whatever. What's the alternative? You know, like, we don't need that kind of staff. We need actual, like, you know, like the Reiki healer types and like sacred medicine women and folks that are, you know, rooted in that, you know, holistic heart-based intelligence that can sit down with someone and provide that, you know, time and space for them to kind of confess all that mess. But yes, you know, like Brandon said, there's so many people on so many different levels of whatever kind of psychopathy or, you know, mental illness and all this stuff, and whatever kind of drugs that have fucked people up, whatever which way. And yes, it's breaking bad habits with the rise of meth or ice and all this stuff in places you would never find a decade or two ago, and with the rise of, you know, certain popular shows under certain titles that I just named, right? Was that too subtle, or you got that?
You're talking about Sanford and Son, right?
We need specialized people that have, you know, like, there's a guy on YouTube that's kind of on the spiritual tip, Victor Otto. He used to be like a heroin addict, and he's like doing great work and trying to heal people and all this stuff. We need people like those in the forefronts and like hired to fill in these positions to actually correct this. But, you know, the whole judicial system and all, you know, it's a clusterfuck of so much shit. And like, you have the Gordian knot, right? You guys are familiar with that term?
Yep. Yes.
I mean,
explain a little bit for me.
It's like the entanglement of the clusterfuck of everything, of every single fabric of society. And like, the Gordian knot is something from, you know, medieval times or whatever, where, you know, like, they have this knot of yarn, and, you know, it's in such a multitude of ways that, you know, it's like impossible pretty much to untangle it out to make, you know, separate every strand or whatever.
It's a it's like a metaphor. It's like this rope
yeah.
that's just all tangled up, and and then people are trying to untangle it. But the more they try to untangle it, the more tangled it becomes. And at the end, the solution was to just maybe Brandon knows it, the more of like the who and the when. But at the end, the solution was to just bring in a sword and cut the fucking knot in half.
That's right.
And you know, so I think it was back in actually Roman times. I think that's where the myth of the Gordian knot comes from. I could be wrong. Maybe it's ancient Greek, but yeah, I think it was like Alexander. Maybe I'm not sure of the who and the when. I wish I were, but I know the mythos. No, I know the story.
Yeah, Truth Stream Media, they did a great segment on that. It's like maybe an hour long at most, but they really nailed it as far as like how that applies. Y'all seen that?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, they're really good.
Yeah, dude.
I have two more things I'd like to add, and then I'm gonna have to jump off here. I got a question, and the other thing is kind of a statement, and it's just an idea that I've thought of. You know who I think could be potentially the most anarchistic out of all the services? I think doctors can be, and that's in many different fields, and that's because they fight against all coercive forces, whether that's the natural coercive forces of nature or coercive forces that are done by violence upon men to other men or to other animals. You know, so they're naturally their service should be naturally anarchistic, no matter what. You know, because they're battling against violence and they're battling against the entropy of nature. You know. So I never hear anybody talk about that, and I know none of us like the medical industry, but if we took the medical industry and actually made it not an industry and actually a holistic healing, community, then we would have more anarchistic doctors, and that's really what we need. So I think doctors are really the pinnacle of true doctors, true holistic spiritual doctors, and whatever kind of doctor we really are really pinnacle of anarchism. And then another thing is a question to you guys. When do you think the right of self-defense comes back to somebody who has violated somebody else, and at what extreme? So what I mean is at theft, how long before they can, use self-defense for their own life and their own property? Or let's say somebody murdered somebody. At what time period do you think that they have the right to defend themselves from somebody killing them? So it's a difficult question. I've had to navigate that myself. I just want to see what you guys think about that.
I immediately go to thinking about kind of this gradient scale of the harm that was done and how based on the harm that was done, the kind of atonement that a person can have or go through or come to realize, how when they were wrong and when they can openly admit it. And our buddy Mark Passio, he likes to talk about it like the cosmic apology. And the universe will know, because it's the universe that dictates these principles. It's the true authority, so it knows. Right. When so when it comes back, that's what I think what it comes back to. I've done violent things in my life. I just talked about a few of them, and I know that I was wrong. I did those things to survive, and I had a very, very confused outlook on life, and I know what I'm capable of because of those experiences, both mentally and physically. But I mean, I wouldn't do them in the same context again, and I think that's when I regain the ability to have self-defense. Because I now understand the importance of not being a psychopath, but having it as an arrow in my quiver, and I can take it out. All right, done. Put it back, instead of just living in that base mentality of just like fight and flight or stand still, freeze.
Freeze are fun. Yeah,
right. Because it's the 3 Fs. A lot of people fight and flight, but they forget about the freeze. Right. So I mean, I think that's really what it comes down to is when,
So
yeah.
I it's like an hour, almost 2. I need to go to sleep. So I'm gonna thank you everyone who participated in it. Rick is not there anymore. Chris was there. James, Brendan, Derek, Leslie, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for partaking in it. You're really the pillars of the LIBERcast, and everybody who's partaking in it. You're all pillars of it. So I want to thank all the people in the comment. Douglas,
Yeah. Thanks
he
for the
was
correction
there,
on that
listening.
on the Gordian knot. Yeah, it is ancient Greek. You see that?
Sharing his wisdom on the comment section. So thank you, Douglas. We're gonna have one. Can't remember exactly. I think it's next week, or there's a podcast that's coming on the LIBERcast. Gonna be about the origins of the occult tradition. So it's gonna be awesome with Douglas. So being there. For the people who are new to this, if you made it at this point of the video, there's a discussion table every week. So if you join the LIBERcast and you have things that you want to talk about, this is an open forum. It's for sharing wisdom, and I'm having all these beautiful people there. It's gonna happen like weekly. Depends on how people participate, but it's gonna be weekly. So come on the LIBERcast and come sharing. If you have interest that you want to share with people, I can like greet you and do a podcast with you if you want to share your beautiful wisdom to all the people. So thank you everyone, and see you next in the 33rd episode next
Wait,
time.
Fred, may I just interject 1 second?
Yes.
So next week, next Saturday, September 24th, is the Shattering the Illusion conference. I would like to. I'd like to just tell everybody
you got a slide of that right now?
I do. I can do that. No problem. Let me do this, and then where is it? What the hell did I do with it? I have it. Nobody panic. It's right here.
Yeah. You guys got how many speakers going on?
We have a lot of speakers for one day, and we have Chris Jansen, Ivan Oyola Jr., myself, Jennifer Rose, and Sean McCann are teaming up on theirs. We have Joe Murray, Mark Devlin, Mark Passio, Nathan Redette, Vinny Eastwood, and Will Keller. So we are very, very happy with this. We're going to tune in early because, we're going to be starting at approximately 9 a.m. And actually, I think opening ceremonies is at 8:45 a.m. because it's such a long day. And we're going to be, Eastern. Thank you, Leslie. Eastern Standard Time. And so we're going to be featuring new music from Diesel Automatic and Joe Murray. They teamed up for a song just for this conference. And then throughout the whole day, we'll have some, music that you guys can listen to, some photography that you guys can look at, other stuff, animations and whatnot that everyone's been working really hard for this. I'm really, really proud of everybody that's involved. So come on by, September 24th, 2022. Come on over. You can watch it at shatteringtheillusion.info. You can watch it at onegreatworknetwork.com. It's going to be on YouTube, all sorts of different places. And, that's that. I think that given the talk of the Gordian knot, if I could just read what Douglas has put in the chat about it, because it's important. The Gordian knot is an ancient Greek legend of Phrygian Gordium associated with Alexander the Great. It's often used as a metaphor for an intractable problem. So it's like untying an impossibly tangled knot would be the intractable problem. And then it's actually solved very easily. That problem is solved easily by finding an approach to the problem that renders the perceived constraints of the problem moot, i.e. cutting the Gordian knot. So thank you very much, Douglas Martin, in the chat for clearing that up. And people that are only listening will appreciate, I hope will appreciate, the clarification as well. Fred, I'm really happy.
I want to be corrected, just like a lot of people do. And it's all about holding yourself accountable, having those high standards. But yeah.
It's not about knowing. It's about making sure other people know, and that sharing it around, spreading it around. And making sure that it's not about being right. It's about making other people just as right. And so I think that's an important point to make. That's my last point. Fred, thank you very much for having me tonight, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, Fred,
No
you're so
problem.
cool, mon ami.
Yeah, thanks for letting me pop in too for a minute.
So have a good
Yeah,
night, everyone. Bye.